I remember my mother saying that when Dad came for a date, she was pushing a guy out the back door and Dad was coming in the front.
Because she said he was on the railroad. And
she never knew when he was coming, so she wasn't one of these people.
She thought he might have a girl in every state, every place. So
she was very popular. She was very pretty. She was like 5'8" tall, and she was a very attractive, and he was a very good-looking guy too. I don't know what happened to us. They were a good-looking couple. But anyway, they were both good dancers. But he was he was your typical old Irish. Very strict about dating. I remember asking a guy asking me to go to the school dance with him. And that was in East Junior. And so I said, sure. So he walked from the East End down to Washington Street. That's where I lived. And my father wouldn't let me go. And I was 15 years old. He says, you're not going to any dance with the guy. He says, you're too young. That's it. Just tell him to go home. Well, you know what happened to that courtship.
Oh, yeah.
That was over.
Didn't he date Peg Crimmins after that?
Yeah, but it was years later that he dated Peg. It wasn't in school.
No.
But that, I thought, well, geez, I'm 15. I think I was 15. I was in the 9th grade.
Yeah, that'd be enough.
And it was a school dance. And we were going to walk. He didn't have a car. I don't think he had a car unless he borrowed his father. He would have been too young, I think, to drive.
Yeah.
I think he walked.
And what school was that?
East Junior.
So you didn't go to Catholic school?
We went to 8th grade at St. Mary's. We went every day to 8th, for 8 years to St. Mary's. And then we went to East Junior for 9th and half of 10th. And then we went over to Central, and that was when Central was half days. When we first went over there, we went afternoons, and then when you got to be in your junior and senior year, I think you were mornings.
Why didn't you go to St. Pat's?
Because we didn't have any money to pay the tuition.
Well, another thing, our uncle offered to pay the tuition. Back then, the tuition was $25, that was all. But he said he would pay the tuition if my mother and father wanted us to go to the Catholic school. But he said, I think they've had their Catholic education through the 8th grades. And he said, I think they got to mix with all people. And he was very ecumenical back at that time. He used to have the round table.
He started the round table of Christians and Jews, Father Flynn. So he was ecumenical before his time. And he thought we should go to the public school to...
What was his first name?
Dennis.
Father Dennis Flynn.
Denny is named after him. Dennis Charles was his name, and he's Dennis Charles.
Right.
And in Latin, that's Denisio Carlos, because I used to call him Denisio Carlos.
So we used to call Dennis, we have a Dennis Charles.
You do? Is your Dennis Charles?
Yes.
Well, that was Father Flynn's name, Dennis Charles.
I know, I wanted to get it on the record, though. He just kept referring to him as Father Flynn.
Well, because even though he was our uncle, we always called him Father Flynn. We should have called him, Father Denny or Uncle Denny or, But my father, that's how strict they were then.
So your father's family was from Schenectady?
No, they were from Utica.
Utica.
New Hartford.
Yeah, well, it's not right next door to Utica.
But New Hartford, it's like Johnson City is for Binghamton.
Right.
But they went to dances at like 14, 15 years old. But it was a different world then.
But they didn't go with a date. They just go with a group.
Where did they live?
She
They lived on Thorpe Street. Or she lived on Thorpe Street.
And Dad lived in Utica. But when Dad was a young man, he was a detective on the railroad. And this is an interesting story, on one of his days off, this cop was being attacked by a guy, I don't know who, but he was being attacked, and my father went to help him. And he got hit over the head. The guy hit him over the head with a gun or something. A gun or something. Anyway, he ended up in the hospital. unconscious. As a matter of fact, I think he was unconscious for days. They didn't think he was going to live. And my uncle, Father Flynn, had a dream that my father needed him. And in the middle of that dream, the hospital called and told him to get right over there, that his brother was dying.
Wow.
So he went. That was before he got married. That was before he married my mother. But it was the headlines in the paper. I remember when she used to put money in the Salvation Army kettle, and I told her, because I was going to Catholic school, I said, you can't do that because you're paying into another religion. And she said, if they can stand out there and ring a bell in the cold weather, I can put money in the kettle. And that was the end of that conversation. Then she used to put the gospel singer on. She loved the gospel singer. And I would say, Mom, that is Protestant songs. She says, I don't care. She says, I like them.
When she put it on, what do you mean? Put it on where?
On the radio.
On the radio.
She'd have that put it every day. She had the gospel singer on. She says, he's got a good voice and I like what he's singing.
The radio, was that a big deal when you were a kid?
Oh, that was
the only thing.
We used to lay in bed at night and they'd have the radio on out in the living room. And our room went right off the living room. And we'd hear all these, the Green Hornet, little theater around Times Square, and all those old things. And they were stories. And they were like on at least once a week. And we heard them all. And some of them were very scary. I can remember listening to some and being very upset with them because they were scary. But I wasn't about to tell my mother and father to turn it off because they were listening to it.
Right.
So what was your favorite?
A little theater around Times Square. That was always a love story. That's the one I liked.
Did they have stuff for little kids? I mean, you remember this as a 6-year-old, this radio, listening to the radio?
Well, I might have been 7, 8, 9. That was when I was on Washington Street. Mary and I were born on Munsell Street.
In Johnson City? Or Binghamton?
In Binghamton.
What about?
And then we moved to Washington Street. And that's where we lived. I lived there until I got married.
Who's older? Which one of you is older?
She's older.
So where were you born, Rita?
You were born in...
I was born on Munsell Street, too.
I didn't know, because I wasn't there when you were born.
And what year were you born, Rita?
1919.
1919. Wow.
And I was born in 1920.
At least it wasn't 1800.
And what was it? When did you guys move from Munsell Street?
I was 6 years old, so Rita had to be 7.
And what was Munsell Street like
It was a very nice neighborhood. It was all nice houses. I mean, they were ordinary houses. It was just but nothing like it is today.
The north side was a very nice neighborhood. All mostly St. Paul's parishioners.
So we went to St. Paul's Church. We started out in St. Paul's School. And then when we moved to Washington Street, we went to St. Mary's School. And our uncle was the pastor of that school at that time. All I remember on Munsell Street is carting Mary home. She was always falling on something and cutting her leg or cutting something. And I remember bringing her home. It seems like she was always doing something. So I was only 6 years old when we moved. I remember going to St. Paul's, and I remember that Mary and I were very competitive.
You remember going to the Protestant church one Sunday, you and Mary?
When we were little?
When you were little, on the north
I
side.
don't remember that.
What was that about? What do you mean, Protestant church?
Well, there was a Protestant church. What was that on Munsell Street? Or
That was right on Munsell Street, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's where...
Yeah, and they knew there was a lot of singing there, and they hadn't got into going to Sunday Mass. I think they were about 5. And one Sunday, they just took off, and, and they came back, and they were saying how wonderful it was.
I can remember getting our record player, the first Victrola, where you wound it up and you put the records on. And I remember some of the records were the 2 Black Crows and Hallelujah, I'm a Bum. And I learned all those words. I could sing them. As a matter of fact, and when Sister went out of the grade in 8th grade, I sang that song to the class while she was out, not while she was there. I was singing Hallelujah, I'm a bummer. And then there was another one. There were 2 bum songs, and they were on the records that my father had.
So your father got the albums? Was this
Yeah.
something that he was...
Yeah, he bought the albums. But that's all I remember about the record player. I remember liking it,
Right.
but we didn't have TV. So.
Rita, what was your favorite stuff on the radio?
Well, I don't know as I listened that much to the radio. I was the worker.
The worker, what do you
No,
mean?
you were in bed, you were listening because you
Oh.
couldn't get away from it.
Well, I probably went to sleep. I was tired.
When you say you were the worker, what do you mean?
Well, my mother depended on me because I was the oldest girl, so I didn't get in the trouble that these 2 got into.
She
So,
was
So
glad
tell
to
us
have
about
us
some of
leave.
that.
She was glad to have Mary and I go out.
what kind of trouble did they get in?
Well, they used to play Follow the Leaders, only they were the leaders. Even the boys followed them. They'd go out, they'd be on rooftops, wouldn't you? You jump from...
We jumped from one roof to the other. And when I was old enough to know better, I walked the railing of Memorial Bridge in the wintertime carrying a pair of ice skates. And I went across the... Margie Kai started out, and I thought, I'm not going to get down unless she gets down. And she never got down. So we crossed the whole river. And one time I slipped, and I balanced myself and kept going. And when I got off of that bridge, I was scared to death that I did it.
Right.
Because I was probably 12, 13 years old then. I was old enough to know better than to do that. It was a very dangerous thing to do. So I never told my kids, nor did I tell my mother.
Rivalry between the 2 of
Yeah.
you? About who's shorter?
No,
No.
I don't think there was any.
I always envied her curly hair, though.
Oh,
That I envied. I wanted, and one day she went over and got a windblown bob. And it was so cute. So I said to my mother, I want a windblown bob. So I went over to the barber, and he gave me a windblown. It didn't look anything like hers. It looked awful, as a matter of fact. And I think the barber was sneering at me as he was doing it, because he had just done Rita's.
Tell them about the time that they had you go to confession to him.
Oh, one time we went, they took us over for First Friday for confessions, and Sister looked at me and a very nasty look on her face, and the tone of voice was, she said, go over to your uncle and tell him what you've been doing.
oh, that's great.
So I went into him, and he was one of these priests that heard confessions. You know, it was like this with the shutters. He never knew who it was. I just went in and went out, but he didn't want to go in there.
You might have known.
I don't think he knew. He didn't act like he knew. But we lived in an old house on Washington Street, and it was a city house. It went with my father's job. And behind the house was a blacksmith shop. They were still shoeing horses. This was when cars were just starting to come in. And we used to hear that all the time, the blacksmith in the back. Then they built a...
What was the sound like? You mean the
well,
hammer?
like the sound of anvils hitting the anvils. And they built a golf course, a miniature golf course across the street from us. And my mother had bought us a golf club and a golf ball. So we would go over. We didn't have any money to play the game, so we would go over after dark. And we had, it was an 18-hole golf course. We would play 17 holes, so we didn't lose our ball. But it would be after the golf course closed. And then we had a lemonade stand. Every summer we had a lemonade stand. That my mother insisted that we have a clean tablecloth on it, that the glasses were shining, and that the lemonade was good. And we sold it. The people coming back from shopping went right by our house. So we sold them for a nickel a glass. And when we each got $1, that was Margie, Kaiser, Mary, and I, we would have a day at Ideal Park. So it cost us 30 cents to go on the bus. It would cost us 15 cents to roller skate. They had a roller skating rink. This was in Ideal Park. And it would cost us $0.10 to put our clothes in a locker. So we had 45 cents. My mother would pack us a lunch. And we had 45 cents to spend on, you could get ice cream on a stick, you could get all kinds of things for a nickel. So we could buy 9 pieces of candy or ice cream. And it was really a great day. We did it every year.
What'd your father do for money?
He worked for the village. He was the storekeeper for the village. And
For the city.
For the city. And he got the house. He didn't have to pay any rent for the house. We got our phone originally, and they paid the electric. We had to heat it, but we used coal, for heating. But it didn't get too warm, We huddled around the kitchen stove in the morning as we get dressed for school.
And it had a yard full of lilac trees. That was the pretty part about it. It had an old barn next door to it. And then it had a stone out front that you could hitch a horse up to. It had the round ring so you could hitch your horse to it.
Yeah, those
It was
were
an
still
old-
around in the 50s, those things.
It was an old house.
And it was on Washington?
It was probably over 100 years old when we lived in it, don't you
Oh,
think?
probably, yeah.
And when was that? What year would that have been?
Yeah, it would be 1926. About 1926.
So this was all before, now, when you had the lemonade and all that, was
That
that
was
before the Great Depression?
I was probably a little bit older. I was probably 8, 9, 10 years old when we had the lemonade stand.
So that would have been right around the Great Depression.
Yeah, it was all of it was
It was
during
all
the Depression.
the Depression.
And I remember standing when they had the big flood in 1935. I remember standing on Kaiser's porch on Stewart Street and watching the things go down the river. There were like pieces of furniture and different stuff. It was a very bad flood. And then we just missed seeing the apartment house fall into the river
On Front Street.
on Front Street. Our relatives had come from Schenectady to see what damage the flood had done, so we went down to Front Street. And that building was all ready to collapse. We could see that it was leaning, but we left before it fell. I wish we had stayed and seen it go in, but we didn't.
How did the Depression affect you all?
Well, we always had a good dinner and good lunch. We always had good food, but we didn't have anything extra. There was.
But they wouldn't talk about it. Mother and Dad never talked about not having any money. And if you made any complaints at all, they said you've got your health. That was it. They didn't listen to it. We never even really realized that we didn't have anything. Till we grew up and found out what other people had. I remember in first grade, Mary and I, they didn't ask us to this girl's birthday party. And she was the one girl in the house. Her father owned a hotel in our class, so they had a little money. So we asked her if we could go to the party. So she said, sure. So we were Father Flynn's nieces, and I think that might have been a little reason why there might have been more reason than that, but I assume that might have been the reason. But anyway, after that, we got invited every year. But that girl had everything. And we went in her bedroom, and the toys that she had, we had never even seen.
On our way to school, we saw the bread lines. They went in and they'd have their milk cans, and they'd go and get their milk cans and bread.
And then Sammy Corbel, they went to Sammy Corbel for coats and jackets. And I remember saying once to my mother, can I go over to Sammy Corbel's and get a jacket? And she said, no, you don't need to.
When you say that you saw them lined up, so
Oh,
You
there
guys
was
never
big-
you had to go get food from
No,
somewhere or anything?
we never had to do that, no.
In fact, people that had cars would park in front of our place. They'd go up to Salvation Army and they would get, baskets of food. And so we saw all of the needs, but we actually didn't need anything like that.
Oh,
We had very good food.
Then another thing, the people that, there was a real poverty at that time. The people that didn't have any money used to come to our house and ask for food. And my mother would always give them. She'd fix them a big plate of food. And we would take it out to them. They were on the side porch. And we would sit, she wouldn't let them come in because she didn't know them. But we would sit and talk to these people. And we'd bring the food, we'd bring them cold lemonade and hot cup of coffee. And they were nice people. They were really nice people that these were bad, really bad times.
Yeah.
So we were lucky to have what we had. There were 5 of us, and that was a big family.
Do you remember when the Depression ended? Do you remember the change when things started to get better?
Well, I figured the Depression ended, for me anyway, when I got the job at IBM. It was a good job. At that time, it paid $20 a week. I worked at Grant's for 26 cents an hour. And then we would work, I would end up with a paycheck at the end of the week. They only worked us when it was really busy. I would end up with $1.98. That would be my paycheck for the week. So then I would go over to Tri-Fi shop, and I would put a quarter down on a dress. And I would pay them every week until I got the dress. And maybe the dress sold for $1.98, but they were cute dresses at that time. And then I remember that we did get some extra work at Easter time. We would make Easter baskets. We would go up in a room over the store and make Easter baskets. And so we got more hours. So there were about 5 of us up there, I think, and this guy is giving us our directions, and I'm the only one that's listening to him. So the guy says, our boss, he said, "You're in charge of the group." So Mary, the minute he left, Mary said, "I'm not taking any orders from you." And she sat down on a basket or something. She sat down on some old boxes and started stuffing
Teresa and Mary
chocolate.
got fired together.
How did Teresa and my mother get fired?
Oh, one Saturday. It was a very, very busy Saturday. And they didn't come in, either one of them. And we were going crazy. We didn't have enough girls. I was so mad at those 2 because I knew they weren't sick. And they called in sick, I think, but I knew they weren't sick. So he said, he didn't believe them either. So Mr. Sweet said, "Just tell those 2 that they're fired." And so I did. I went back to Cook Street and
She couldn't wait to get back.
I was furious with them because I was doing double duty on it because they didn't come in. Teresa was actually one of the worst waitresses. And the only one that would work with Teresa was Mary. Mary liked Teresa. She was her sister-in-law, so she worked with her. Teresa was a lot of fun, but she would take one person and they would get excellent service. And Mary would have the rest of the whole. But we were very underpaid. I mean, it was...
Rita, did you work?
Yes. When I
You worked down
graduated,
there.
I graduated in 37, and I worked there during the lunch hour, and I worked there for 2 weeks. And my mother and father wouldn't let you quit a job until you had another job. So I had determined that I was going to get something other than grants. So I did get a job at, it was the top of Fowler's. It was Mutual Fabric at the time. And I got $8 a week.
For 40 hours.
For 40 hours. And you really worked. I worked as hard at that job as I worked at any job.
And made no more money,
And
except you got more hours.
so after Christmas, they laid people off, So during the time, I think I was only laid off about a week when my uncle decided to send me to business school because I was thinking of being a nurse.
What uncle is that?
Father Flynn.
Hmm.
And so I went to business school. I decided that would be better for our financial circumstances at home and everything. So, and I hadn't even finished the course. I'd gone about a year when his secretary quit because her father was ill. And so my uncle had me come in, and I worked for him for 4 years. So that was probably as good training as I could have had. I'd had the business course, and he expected you to do everything. It was like you were like an office manager, and I even wrote letters that he signed, and you're young, and so you think you can do everything.
Right.
You think you're smart. Like now, I'd be petrified if I had that job. But he'd have different priests. They'd come in and he'd say, "Well, Rita will figure out your tax for you." And so now I have my own tax figured out, But when I was there, I'd find out what I had to do, and on my lunch hour, I'd go to the tax office and find out what I had to do. So then after he was sick for about a year before he died. I worked there for 4 years. And after he died, I stayed on for 6 months, and then I went to IBM. And back then, I decided that it wouldn't be fair to get another job and quit. So I told them that I was quitting. I just figured I'd get a job at IBM, which luckily I did.
But you had a lot of experience in that office.
Yeah. So
Then you stayed at IBM.
I stayed at IBM for 39 years.
Wow.
38 years and 10 months.
I worked there for 3.5 years, and then I got married. They didn't hire married women then.
Really?
Oh, really?
When I went out with Jim to Sioux Falls, that was the end of the job. You couldn't come back to it.
Now, who went to work at IBM first?
Margaret.
I did.
Okay.
Was Jackie there ahead of me?
Yeah, I think Jack
I
was
think
there.
Jackie was the first one. And then I got the job.
And then, what was the priest's name that took you down?
Father Toomey. Father Flynn played golf with Father Toomey. And Father Toomey...
Not the Father Toomey that was over here.
I forget what his first name was. But anyway, Father Toomey played golf with the boss, the one that hired me. And so Father Toomey took me down in his Lincoln. He had a big Lincoln car. He took me down and introduced me to the boss. And 10 days later, I had a job. But that's how I got it, was pull.
That was the $20 a week.
I was delighted when I got it.
Well, see, then Margaret's working, and I'm working at St. Mary's, and Margaret's getting $2 raises. And she'd come home with a $2 raise, and, I'm a little green-eyed, And so, but while my uncle was sick, I thought, there's nothing I can do. I got to stay here. He was sick for a year. And so after he died, that's when I decided that I was going to put my application in IBM. And
So you worked at St. Mary's to take care of him? That's why you were there?
no, I worked there because his secretary had resigned because her father was sick. And so I stayed there 3 years. I actually worked with him. And then the last year, he was in and out of the hospitals. He was down to Presbyterian Hospital in New York. And
How did he die?
pardon?
What did he die of?
He had an accident getting in his car. His hand was in. From that,
He caught the hand on the car, something, and then tore it open. Then he got aquadermatitis.
How old was he?
67.
Yeah.
Was he the first close person to die?
No.
No, we had some cousins.
Aunt Nell died.
Yeah.
She was our first close one, I think.
And Aunt Mag died.
And Aunt Mag died. But Aunt Nell died ahead of Aunt Mag.
Yeah.
And
So you were close to these aunts?
Oh, yeah.
very close.
Were they Flynn's or they?
No,
They were
Heathermans.
Heathermans.
They were mother's sisters. As a matter of fact, I'm named after one. Her name was Margaret, and they called her Mag. And I said I didn't want to be called Mag. So my mother said, well, just don't, if anybody calls you Mag or Maggie, just don't answer. Don't say, just, and that's what I did. So nobody called me Mag or Maggie.
Oh, and when I let the priest know that I was going to retire, I was going to resign, he offered me $10 a week more to stay. My mother and father would have liked me to have stayed, but I had made up my mind then, and so I thought, there's no way.
I'm going for the gold.
And I liked the job there. It was a nice job.
So what years would that was before
39.
Before the war, then.
Yeah, 39 to. In fact, Jack went in the service while I was working there.
When I was going out to Sioux Falls with Jim, Father Gerald was here on vacation, and Jackie was in the Navy. So Father Gerald was going back to Notre Dame. Jackie was going out to California, and I was going out to Sioux Falls. So Teresa decided that they would make it look like Jackie and I had just gotten married, and the priest was going to go with us on the trip. And so she had a corsage on me, and she threw rice at the train station and had the whole show that we were just married. And then they've got a picture of me sitting on one of the boxcars, one of the transports, with my legs crossed and waving goodbye, And she set it all up, set up all the pictures, everything, shaking hands with Father Gerald. So I get on the train, everybody is grinning. Here comes the young, and Jackie was in his Navy suit, and here is these young couple that are getting on, just married, and Father Gerald is with us. So Father Gerald gets off Father Gerald got off
At Notre Dame.
He was on longer than Jackie. Jackie got off in Chicago, so he changed trains in Chicago. Father Gerald went on to Notre Dame, got off, I think at Notre Dame, or right near the South Bend he got off. And I had to go to Sioux Falls by myself. So when I got off, at my station was the next station, Jim was there. I never saw anything so funny in all my life. He had a coat. The Army never gives you clothes that fit you. He had a coat that went down to his ankles, one of these khaki coats, and he had a stocking cap. And I said, is this the guy I married? I could not believe that this was the guy I married. He looks absolutely ridiculous. So I get off of and I didn't tell him that he looked ridiculous, but we got a room, and the only room that was left in this hotel had 5 beds in it. So he had the night. He could stay overnight for this night. He had to be back the next day. Then he joined the band. That's another thing that's real funny. This one guy played in the band. He played a horn or something, and he was one of Jim's best friends. So Jim wanted to get in at night so he could be with me, because I was staying in a rooming house, and I was alone. So he decided, and this guy got a room right next to us. He got it was a little room with an extra room, and they had a baby. So he said to Jim, join the band. And Jim says, well, I don't play anything. He says, I don't know how to play anything. He says, anybody can play the cymbals. He says, so join the band and you'll play the cymbals. So Jim's scared to death, but he wants to get in. So he figures he'll give it a try. The first time he goes out, it's a cymbal solo. King Cotton. And he didn't dare to touch the cymbals because he didn't know what to do, so there was silence. And then when the band would start and the cymbals would come in, this one guy next to him said, Jim, why don't you just hold them? He was clanging them at the wrong time. And he never got caught, though, and I was scared to death he'd get caught because he could not play. He didn't have any idea how to play those cymbals. And then the night that he got in the band, they took all the passes away from the band, and he never got in anyway. And he's stuck in the band. He couldn't quit the band because he had told him he played the
They
cymbals.
probably realized what he did.
So he was stuck in the band for the rest of the time that he was there. He was a cymbal player in the band. So Rita came out to Sioux Falls when I came home. She came out because I was pregnant for Jimmy at the time, and so she came out to come home with me. And we stopped in Buffalo. We got off in Buffalo to see the falls,
Mm-hmm.
and then we came home. I was out there for 4 months.
Like, where were you when Pearl Harbor happened?
We had been
Bowling.
bowling at IBM, and we came in from the bowling, and we heard it on the radio.
I think we heard it before because we went out and had
No, I heard it in the house. That
In the
was
house?
the first that I heard that they were.
So the radio was just on. Was the radio on like all the time, or somebody turned it on to listen to it, or?
They
Well,
had-
probably my mother and father had it on, and so we just, But I do remember we came back from bowling.
And I remember the last time that we saw Bobby Gallagher. We were at the McMahon house on Cook Street.
Bobby Gallagher was
your-
married to Teresa.
Teresa, married to Teresa. And he was in his full uniform. And Paul McMahon was playing the Marine hymn. And Bobby was leaving, and he had this, Bobby was a great guy. He had this grin on his face, and he was waving. And that's the last that I saw Bobby Gallagher. That was the first real thing that really hit us when Bobby got killed. We were all just devastated by Bobby. I mean, it was 3 months. The baby was 3 months old. He had never seen the baby except for pictures. And then Jim was sent over into the same area. And I remember him sending me a telegram on Mother's Day to congratulate me on being a mother, and I was scared to open it. Because I thought this could be history repeating itself. He's in the same area that Bobby was sent to, and I had Jimmy. So I thought that this could be a repetition of what happened to Teresa, and I get this telegram, and I'm terrified to open it. And all it was is congratulations, Mommy, or something that he said on it. And I had mixed feelings about it.
Can I rewind just a bit and ask how the Flynns and McMahons came to meet? Where it all started.
Oh yeah, I can tell you how that happened. Or do you want to tell it?
No, you tell them. You're a good storyteller.
Well, I know, but I'm telling everything. It's up to you to say something. Well, anyway.
After all, you are taller, Rita.
Mary went out on a double date with Peg Crimmins, and Peg Crimmins was with Bob. And she was with some other guy that I guess he sat way over here and she's way over here. There was no communication between them, so it was a pretty dull date, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, either the next night or the night after, Bob called Mary for a date. And we all put together with her outfit. Rita had a blue sweater that was yours. It was a beautiful sweater. And I gave her a jacket, and anyway, the three of us put together to get her really outfitted for this date. But before she would go on the date, she called Peg Crimmins. And she said, now what is this with you and Bob? She says, is there anything between you? Because if there is, I'm going to tell him no. And she says, no. She says, we're just good friends, and we go out together. She says, there's nothing there at all. She says, so go out with him. So that's where it started. And then it was like, he really went for her.
Tell about when you were at Sioux Falls and they saw Mary pregnant. And
Oh, yeah, they spread the story. They saw Mary over town expecting at any minute. And they spread the story all through IBM. Because I wasn't with Jim long enough to be that far along. But I was having somebody else's baby. And this girl that worked with me, Peggy Woolashak, she said, that's not true. She says she has an identical twin sister. And she's the one that's expecting. So Peggy wrote me a letter, and she said, now, I said, when that baby is born, I said, my baby, I was pregnant for Jimmy at that time, I'm sending a picture to that office of this baby and I, so they know the difference. I was furious that they spread that story around, but they really thought I was having somebody else's baby. Mary and Bob lived in with his parents and with Teresa. So one day we came home from IBM, and those two are putting on an act. They've got a liquor bottle, and they're sitting in the chair, and they're slurred talking, and they're, oh, let's have another one, Teresa. And then Mary says, oh, shit. And Mary never talked like that. And I thought they were both drunk. I really thought they were both drunk, and I said, Mary, you really shouldn't do that. I was really, well, then the two of them lost it. They just burst right out laughing. They said they hadn't had anything. The bottle was empty. They hadn't had anything to drink. But they fooled me and they fooled you.
Oh, yeah.
We thought
they did a good act.
And then how did Jim come into the
Well, I met Jim at Cook Street. I think Bob was trying to get rid of me. I was too close to Mary, and I think he wanted me to have some other attachment besides Mary. He was pushing for that one, I think. Because when Jim asked me to the Lourdes dance, I think was the first, no, the Notre Dame dance was the first big thing. Bob went with me and helped pick out the gown, and he paid $10 on it. He wanted me to have a really nice gown. He was really promoting this. But that's where I met him. I met him at Cook Street.
And how did he come to Cook Street? Was he a friend?
He was a friend of John's. He was a real good friend of John's. Matter of fact, he had come there when he was a kid. So I met him there, and I was dating a guy from IBM at that time, Maury Lee. He was 6'4", the basketball player, and I was dating him a lot. But when I saw Jim, it was Jim.
Love at first sight.
Or the Notre Dame dance, then he invited me to the Lourdes dance, which were the two big social events of the year then. And I did have as pretty a gown as anybody had, and he paid for part of it. I never forgot him for that. But he liked Jim, and I think he liked me. But I think we were very close. Mary and I were very close.
Didn't he come one night for Mary and he got mixed up?
He got mixed up. He said hello, Mary, when I went to the door.
And you say Mary and Bob were living on Cook Street?
Yeah.
So when they got married, they moved in there?
They moved in there.
And then Margaret and I moved in.
We were down there all the time.
And then Jack even stayed one night.
Jack came in one night and said, I heard him say, I was in the living room, and I heard him say to Bob's father, hello, Pop. Hi, Pop, he says. Then he walks right upstairs to a bedroom to go to bed.
So Pop had to be
everybody called him Pop.
He was easy to get along with. The night that Jack stayed there, Pop was going up to the 3rd floor because there was beds up on the 3rd floor, and he says, God bless my soul and body, there's not a bed in this place. Margaret was there, and I was there, and Jack was there. But the next morning, he was up making pancakes. No talk about the bed or anything. Making pancakes for the whole group.
I mean, there was a lot of people that lived there besides that, right? Wasn't there?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Teresa
and her mother, Mrs. McMahon's mother, she lived there.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
How?
Grandma Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
I remember we got dresses to go for a square dance. Teresa and I. Teresa got it in blue and I got it in red. And they were the same, but they had panties with them. And they had big skirts. And if you swung around, it would show the panties. So we're out in the front lawn, swinging around with the dresses. And Teresa said, you better be careful because Grandma Fitzpatrick could be at the window.
What was she like?
She was a very nice person, but very old-fashioned. She did not believe in pants or shorts or anything on women. Nor would she have liked the idea of the panty dresses. especially if you swung around in them.
You want to talk about the Stork Club there at,
Oh,
That was a fun house.
where was that now?
This was the Ackley Avenue apartment house. And at one time, I lived in the first floor apartment. Mary lived up on the second floor on the other side. Mary Pat lived up over me. Teresa and Johnny lived on the third floor. And Kit and John lived on the first floor on the other side. So, and we all had a lot of kids. So there was one girl, her name was Mary Cox, and somebody said she couldn't get pregnant. They said, well, why don't you move into Ackley Avenue? She said, because everybody in that house gets pregnant. So after one of the apartments, I think John and Kid or somebody moved out, she moved in, and she got pregnant. She really did get pregnant.
Good.
And we had, I don't know how many kids we had there. I remember one lady coming from Fowler's and wanting to know if I wanted to take out an account. They used to go door to door then trying to get you to open accounts. And then she looks out in the play yard and she says, oh, is this a public playground here? I said, no. I said, they're all ours. I said, they're not all mine, but they're all ours. We used to go to the school picnics on the trolley car. That was a lot of fun because every time you got down on Old River Road, it went off the tracks. And that was a lot of fun. We wanted it. We were praying it would go off the tracks because it stalled the trip, and it was fun on the trolley. It was really a lot of fun. When they started going on the buses, it wasn't anywhere near as much fun as the trolley. But we had a yearly picnic, St. Mary's, to Ideal Park. And my mother and my aunt were always there to help with the serving, to serve the kids and to watch out, help, kind of chaperone them.
Now, which aunt was this?
Aunt Nell. But the two of them always went to that picnic. Mother was in on everything. She really was a better person than I was. I start comparing myself to her and I think, geez. She was so unselfish.
So when did your parents move from Washington Street?
It was after I got married.
it was about 44, I think.
Yeah, it was the year I got married.
Oh,
I was married. No, I was
You were married in 43.
It was a year after I got married.
yeah,
Was
44.
that when your father retired, or?
No, he retired a couple of years after that. He was 67 when he retired.
And he got a settlement of $3,000. That was it.
And
There
we
was no
never
Social
heard
Security.
anything about money, I mean, can you imagine if all of a sudden you're retiring? They give you $3,000, no Social Security, no medical benefits or anything, but that was the kind of faith they had.
What did they do?
We were working and we paid.
We paid for it, but
Yeah.
it's
I gave
still,
her half my check when I worked.
No, after
on
he
it.
retired, what did he do?
Well, he didn't do anything.
What did they do for money, though? I mean,
Well,
We were-
Jack was in the service, so Jack made sure that he sent them bonds because he didn't want to have any lapses in giving them the money, so he sent $10 a week in bonds, and so they used that. Margaret
And I
was
gave him
making,
$10 a week.
and I gave him $10.
And at that time, $30 a week bought a lot.
Right.
But they didn't say that you have to give this or anything. It was just that was what he retired on.
And he paid cash for the house because Father Flynn left the money to him. They each got money when he died, and that paid for our
And
house.
he had a little bit over from. I think they got like $8,000. The priest then didn't have a lot of money. Even Father Flynn didn't. They got $8,000, and I think $4,000. That's the price of Bingham Street at that time.
So
So-
that's where they moved, was to Bingham Street?
To Bingham Street, yeah. Then after he died, then I spotted the little house on Greenridge Street, and I just loved it, and I thought Mother would actually love it, which she did. It was
She
four.
didn't want to move up on the East End.
It was four little rooms, and then you see what I did to it. Now I like the 4 little rooms. I could
So
take
your
care
mother
of
lived there with you?
Yeah, yeah.
So after your father died, or?
After he died, yeah.
I never knew that.
She died there.
She loved
did,
that house. She had baked a couple of cakes for our study club that was coming there that night, Father Brown, and there was a whole group of them coming. And she wasn't in it, but they ate her cake.
So your mother moved in there until she died, and then Mary moved in there until she died. Is that right?
Well, before Mary moved in there,
Jackie moved in there until he died.
Jack moved in there, and he was there
Until he
about
died.
3 years before he died.
And Aunt Gertie.
And then
That house has been a haven.
Aunt Gertie.
I'm not moving in there.
They all died.
But Aunt Gertie lasted almost 9 years. She moved in at 87, and she was almost 96 when she
During
died.
arsenic and old lace story.
And then Denny moved in and out, but Denny wasn't happy in my house. I saw Denny every day. Denny would stop by, but he didn't like all the things that I did. He even objected to me going to mass every day. You know,
Your brother did.
yeah, my brother.
Why?
did. He said, Marion and I, we never went to mass every day, and so I would tell him when I would be at church, somebody would ask how Denny was, you know, and it would be somebody that he worked with. So I'd say, well, I saw so-and-so at mass today, and they were asking how you were doing. And so I wanted him to know that other people go to mass, you know, but he went every Sunday. He wouldn't miss on a Sunday at all, you know, but he didn't like the idea that I went every day. And when we went to Florida, we were in Florida for a month, and the first day we were there, your mother and father and I and Denny, we all went to mass. So I told Denny, I said, now we'll come back and get you for lunch if you don't want to go to mass. You know, I thought, I'm not going to push this on him. We wanted to go every day, and the mass there was absolutely beautiful, you know, and there was a lot of retirees there. And so the first day that I said to him, we'll come back and pick you up for lunch. And he says, no, he says, I think I'll go with you. And who did he see? But the same guy that had been asking for him. And he enjoyed going to mass, you know, in Florida. And then we'd go out to lunch.
Now, was Denny named after...
Yeah, oh yeah. But he wasn't named Dennis Charles. He's Dennis Francis.
But your Denny was also named after Father Flynn.
So,
Only he was also named after Father Ray.
Father Flynn was a pretty big guy.
Yeah.
I was named after Father Ray.
Were you?
And that my middle name is Ray. And so my mother named my father's middle name is Joseph, and every other boy in the family is named Joseph, middle name, except for me, which was Raymond.
Because
That's interesting.
Teresa's
would've
mother
been tough.
named all of her
Joseph.
kids,
Yeah.
all of her boys had
Jojo.
Joseph for a middle name.
Except Father Gerald, wasn't it?
No, I think they were all Joseph.
No, I think there was one that wasn't Joseph.
I don't
Was
think
it?
so.
What's Father Gerald's middle name?
I think
have
it's
to look that
Gerald.
up.
Gerald
Joseph.
Francis, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Gerald Francis. And he's the one that became the
Right.
priest.
Well, I hope it's
Now, do you
not
still
over.
go to Mass every day?
Yes. She's got me going too.
You still go every day. For all these years, you go to Mass every day.
Oh yeah.
She's been going since she was a kid, I think.
Well, when I could, you know, there were times
We were
when
pretty loyal, I think.
the job, you know, I couldn't go, you know, the time of work and all that. But I've got.
You're going to be up so much higher up in that
Oh no, I think
cloud than I
think
am.
once people, you see people that go, and all of a sudden you see first you might see a wife go,
I'm going to be
and then all of
higher.
a sudden their husband joins them, and
Pull me in.
Might help.
No, if Father Sawanka is
God
very
loves you
Satan,
better than me.
he'll
And Mom and Trace will be pulling you the other way.
Do you have a favorite priest saying mass after all the time masses you've been to? Is there like one priest that you?
Well, we like Father Sawanka very much, and he's at St. Mary's.
That's now, but I mean, through the years, is he the best one ever? I mean,
No,
do you have-
Father
No.
Berrigan was a wonderful priest.
I think all of them were,
Yeah, but Father Berrigan was married, and his wife died. He was the most wonderful priest, and that was the priest I was starting to go to confession to when the sister sent me over to my uncle. It was Father Berrigan that I was going to. I was on my way. I was in the line to Father Berrigan. She grabbed me right out of the line. She says, "You're going to your uncle."
You two have competition at one time about who's going to have the most kids?
Never. I never ran any races with those two. I wondered about Teresa and Mary, though. If they were running it. Because Teresa had 12 and Mary had 13. So I did wonder about that one. Teresa says no, that they were not running any races. But
I'll tell you what. As far as us kids were going, we were running a race.
you were counting?
We were like we need one more. We got to catch up.
Well, we always ran the race of who could say the names the fastest.
Yeah.
Teresa used to call me a piker.
Your mother
And
had
you
them
know
all
what she
numbered.
said? If I wasn't using birth control, she says I'd have had a few more girls. And I wasn't using birth control at all. If you weren't using birth control, you'd have a few more girls. That's why you don't have any girls. You don't have- That was your mother's answer to it. Every Thursday night we went shopping.
Yep.
And your father was so funny on Christmas Eve. He was always shopping Christmas Eve. And he would have we'd meet him up in, it was where Grandway was. It was up on the north side. And they'd have a lot of sales there. And he'd be just filling the basket with toys, running around because he didn't have a lot of time, picking up whatever was on sale and whatever he could get, and he'd fill the basket up and then check it out. Like our kids had to eat breakfast, they had to go to Mass, and they had to eat breakfast.
We actually had 2 Christmases because we'd have the Christmas at our house where we tore open everything, and we knew you guys would be having it afterwards, and we'd come over here after.
They'd come
all of
over to our
stuff and
house.
watch you guys open all yours.
We never had as many as you guys had. I remember looking in your living room one time and thinking it looks like Fowler's Basement toy store. The living room was just
It
full.
was full, I know. I
And
remember.
everything that a kid would want was in that
Rickshaws,
living room.
bicycles.
Oh, they got the best gifts.
How did you guys keep track of with the McMahons and McCabes living so close to each other? I mean, how did you know who was where?
We'd call and say, "Is so-and-so over here?" I remember Pat used to hide out in one of the bedrooms on the lake so I wouldn't get her to come home because I needed Pat. I had all these boys and I needed the help that she could give me. And then the girls would hide her and try to get away with leaving her out at the lake. She did stay out there some. But her sisters used to stay at my house too. I never minded the girls coming and staying at my house.
We had a small fire in our house one time on Leroy Street. It was a lot of smoke, more than fire. And Sheila was, I don't know where my parents were, but Sheila goes upstairs and she says, the house is on fire. So I went upstairs to see about this fire, and it was, sure enough, all this smoke, and I'm trying to locate it. So I go downstairs and I said, did you call the fire department? And she said, no. I called Pat McCabe. She's calling the fire department.
I counted 35 people on that dock once out at that lake.
Yeah.
And a lady went by in a boat and she said, is this a public swimming area? And I hollered, no, they're all ours. We had a lot of fun out there. Your father used, I could Still hear him up there by the
Cooking the hot dogs.
The hot dogs are ready, and they'd come out of trees, everything. You'd see these little bodies coming.
And when Bob and Jim, were they both gone at the same time in the war?
No. Yeah, they were. But
Yeah.
Jim went.
So what did you guys do when they
Jim
were
went
gone?
after Bob.
If they were both gone at the same time, you're both worried that they were going to,
Oh, yeah. Bob was in he was in worse than. Jim was in a plane, at least.
that's safe in a plane.
It wasn't
Right.
that safe.
I know,
because
I'm just saying that.
one of the planes that was flying with them, it was one of their planes, flew too close and took a chunk out of their plane, midair. And the pilot on his plane was furious. He just came too close to the plane. So that could have been a fatal. He flew 30 missions. But Bob was like this hand-to-hand battle. That was really worse.
But how did you keep up with the war when they were over there? You get letters, and what did you do to keep?
I can remember sitting out on that front porch, Mary and I, saying we really should write them a letter. We really should write a letter. And when both of us everybody's out there, and we're having a great time out there. Well, we felt so guilty that we didn't. Mary would make
a lot higher than you are.
I remember one night there was an earth tremor, and Mary and I are sitting in the booth up on the second floor. And I said to Mary, I says, the kids were all in bed. I says, did that feel like a tremor to you, like the building was shaking? And she says, yeah, well then the two of us beat it out of the house, and the kids are in the house. They're all in bed in the house, and the two of us are standing outside, and I said, Mary, the kids are in there. So then we went running in the house. But it stopped. It didn't last very long.
Much higher. Much higher.
And one night we went out. We were the McCabes were over. Kathleen and her mother came over. We invited them to dinner. We invited them a lot to dinner because Kathleen's husband was in the service too. So we would invite them to dinner. So we went down to put coal on the fire. And so you have to shovel out the embers.
Right.
So we shoveled them in a basket. These hot embers we shoveled in a basket. And the two of us, hysterically laughing, got one handle, she's holding one handle and I'm holding the other, and the basket's on fire. And we're running out of the cellar with this basket. So then when Kathleen was going, we had so many cabbages. Pop did the garden for us, and he made coleslaw. All the time he made coleslaw. He used to come over to us with a quart of coleslaw. And we wouldn't have finished the last quart, and he'd have another quart. And I said, before he'd get in, I'd say to Mary, I think Pop has another quart of coleslaw. Don't tell him we didn't finish this quart. We had this German couple that lived up over us, and they were always cold in the apartment. They would rattle the register to let us know, or they'd tap on the floor. And then they'd holler down. You could holler down and you could hear, it's cold up here. And they would never come down and help us build the fire. We had no guys. We had to do it all. So and then one time they told us it's either too cold or too hot in this place. It's never right, and they moved. And we were glad they moved. They were miserable, absolutely miserable towns. And we weren't the best landlords. But that was Ackley Avenue. That was a part of the fun on Ackley Avenue.
Coal furnace.
But Jim said he didn't get a lot of letters. He'd go for mail call, and I'd think, well, that was probably the beautiful summer night, and I'm out there, on the front porch talking with Mary. But I remember when Bob sent her the record that he made over in Germany.
What record is it?
That's the shame.
They lost. I don't know why she misplaced. That was the most beautiful record I have ever heard. He had a background music that was one of the songs on the background music was "There's a Small Hotel," And then there was another song that was just as beautiful. And all through this background music, Bob is talking to Mary. And Bob was a performer. That record was like a production. It was beautiful. The two of us are standing there with the tears running down our face listening to this record. It was the most beautiful record. How she let that record get out of her hands, I'll never know.
Maybe it was out of the lake.
That I would have treasured that record. That
Could have been lost in the fire.
Yeah.
no, I don't know. She let somebody borrow it, I think, and I don't think she ever got it back. But that was it was the most beautiful message for a husband to send to his wife. She was having a rough time at that time. That was a hard thing when he went and she had 3 kids. And I know how hard it was because I lived with her. I had 4 kids. I had Jimmy and her 3.
And both men gone.
Both men gone. And they had the nerve to complain about their heat. They could have hollered down, "Could we help you?"
Yeah.
Our husbands were fighting in the war. We didn't do a good job with the fire. We were not good at taking care of the fire.
They could have helped.
Remember, Pop planted the garden, and we went out and bought these overalls and shirts. They were real cute outfits for gardening. We went out there a couple of times and picked stuff. He says they do not pick a weed out of that garden. He says they've got the clothes for it, but they don't go near that garden. Pop would pick the stuff and bring it into us. We did not go near that garden. So one time we were going up the back stairs. This is on Ackley Avenue. That Ackley Avenue. You could write a book on Ackley Avenue, and that would be a funny book. Bob had, from overseas, he gave Mary directions on what to do for the apartment, because he hadn't finished them before he was sent overseas. So they were bringing furniture in from Olam's. And Mary is showing them. She's up ahead showing the guys where to go. And we have these outfits on, the overalls and the blue plaid shirts. So the guys are bringing the furniture up. And of course, I'm going up to see how the furniture's going to look, and I'm right behind the guy carrying it. Mary's up in the front. And he's looking at Mary, and then he looks down. He says, "My gosh," he says, "there's 2 of them." But your father used to pull Mary up when she was pregnant. He used to pull her up through the trap door in their bathroom when he lived on the 3rd floor. They had a 3rd floor apartment, and he would go, Mary would knock on the trap door.
This is going to John and Teresa's apartment.
Yeah. And he would come in and lift up the trap door and pull Mary up the trap doors because she couldn't get up. She was too big. I could get up, but Mary couldn't get up. But he would pull her up, and they'd be hysterically laughing.
Oh, my God.
But we'd go up there and we'd kind of listen for the kids, you know. And sometimes we'd run down that attic stairway and check on the kids. Oh, and I have to tell you, Joni Carlin says I should be mentioned in this tape. She was the babysitter. She said, I used to go from apartment to apartment to apartment checking kids. And that was Teresa's kids, that was Mary's kids, and my kids. We'd be over in what we called the clubhouse, Mary's house.
Well, that was after Mary.
Now, how did she get
moved
paid?
out.
Did she get paid by everybody, or?
She got to eat.
She loved being at our houses. Mary did pay her, but Mary didn't have a lot of money to pay her. But see, when Joni was growing up, Mary took care of her. She was up there all the time babysitting. And so when Mary had children and Bob went in service, Anna told, that was Joni's mother, she says, you go down and help Mary. She needs you. She says, she was here all the time when you were growing up. She says, she needs you now. You go down and help her. I remember once there was a bird in the bedroom with the kids. And I was scared to death of the bird, and so was Joni. So I pushed Joni in the bedroom and closed the door, and I said, catch the bird. She was terrified. She came running out. She didn't catch the bird. I don't know how we got rid of the bird, but Joni came running out. She says, I was as afraid of that bird as you were.
Rita, where were you living during this time?
Greenridge.
Oh, you had the house.
No, not on Greenridge then.
Oh, no, I was still...
You were on Bingham Street.
Yeah, we didn't move to Greenridge.
The guys were home when you moved.
Yeah, that's right. Because we moved to Greenridge in '55.
Did you hang around over at the Stork Club?
I didn't
You didn't
go there
much.
so much because when I was working, that's why I wanted to retire early. You know, I retired at 62 because
She
by the
avoided
time I
us.
got through, work,
She
I
wasn't going to be
I was
caught
tired.
dead.
But I did babysit. I babysat one night a week for each one of them, and then I gave them
I wouldn't
one.
have been there either.
I gave, but no, I go home.
It was a madhouse.
Tutti Frutti
Berkeley
Nutty.
Avenue was
Tutti
a
Frutti
madhouse.
Nutty, yeah.
There's Rita, every Sunday, Tutti Frutti Nutty.
So how did you get around? Did you have a car?
I had a car, let's see, in '51, I think. I didn't have in fact, I had my license before I had a car. I had my license in, let's see, 1951, I think. And that summer I got a car. December of '51, and that summer I got a car. And I hadn't driven at all before I got the car. I remember coming out with that car. I'm going up Court Street, and I'm thinking, oh my God. But
That was the first car you drove?
that was the first car.
And what kind of a car was it? Did I miss that?
I think it was a Chevy. I
One of those
think-
big old things?
Yeah.
How the heck did somebody your size drive it?
Oh, I can drive a regular car.
Those were big cars, though. You had to
I
shift
know.
the gears and everything, right?
I know,
Yeah.
Remember
We used to
Dr.
borrow her car for the teacher's picnic.
driving around in that car? You could only see his head top of it.
I remember Jim taking me out driving, giving me driving lessons, and I was making all kinds of mistakes. So he looks at me and he says, and the kids are in the back seat, and he says, Margaret, forget that I am the driving teacher, or forget that I'm your husband. Think of me as the driving teacher, and pay attention to what you're doing. And I said, I got laughing. I says, you know, I says, it's very difficult for me to forget that you're my husband. I said, there's kids in the back seat, and they're hollering mommy at me, and they're hollering daddy at you. So I said, it is very hard. You know what? He took me home, and that was the end of the lesson. If you don't want to listen to me, he said, well, we might just as well go home. So we went home.
So it's an interesting life.